Hot off the presses with the reveal of two brand new characters for both the Death Guard and the World Eaters, we have now today been shown their datasheets, and we can actually get a bit of a glimpse at what these HQ choices will be able to do, as well as maybe a little bit of an idea about some of the other changes that may be coming in their upcoming codexes. And diving straight into it, first up, we've probably got my favourite of the two. I've always been a long-standing World Eaters like player and Khorne Demon fan, but actually from what we've seen yesterday and today, my heart may be changing ever so slightly towards the Death Guard, because I think this guy looks really cool and his rules seem really fun. Now, this is of course the Lord of Poxes. We don't know his points yet, so that is going to be a big determination as to whether he's actually good or not, but on the face of it, just on the datasheet, he does seem to have a lot going for him. He's got a fairly standard 5-inch move, but then, as you will see, he's got a better than normal toughness 6, which for a non-Terminator Death Guard character is actually a change, and it leads to some interesting speculation about some rumours we've heard for the regular Plague Marines. But before we get to that, he also has a 3-up armor save, a 4-up invuln, which is again fairly standard, and he's got a solid 5 wounds to help him survive any sort of precision attacks that little bit better. As usual, he does have a 6-up leadership and then just 1 OC. So the big thing here is that boosted toughness, and that could be a really big deal, because one of the rumors that was swirling around for the Death Guard was that they were moving to a more elite, tankier design in keeping with armies like the Custodes, and the rumor was that Plague Marines were going to be going to toughness 6, and the unique Terminator units like the Death Shroud would be moving to toughness 7. And this datasheet, at least partially, seems to indicate that that might be happening, because at the moment all of your normal power armor HQ choices are toughness 5, so it would be weird for this guy to be toughness 6 if all the other ones weren't moving up as well. And if all your HQ options in power armor are moving to base toughness 6, then I think it's a fairly safe bet that the Plague Marines will go up as well. So that could be toughness 6 Plague Marines in this new book, which is a really good breakpoint. It makes them much more durable against strength 3, strength 5, strength 6, and strength 10 attacks, which are some really common weapon values at both range and in melee. And so in a lot of situations in this new book, they could effectively be -1 to be wounded by all of those styles of attacks. But in terms of this character himself, in terms of the Lord of Poxes, what he's got is he has a plasma pistol for a bit of token shooting. It's nothing amazing, but I mean, it's at least better than a bolt pistol. His melee weapon, though, is the Great Plague Blade, and this was mentioned as being one of the scariest melee weapons in the entire game back when this guy was previewed. And I mean, let's be fair, GW have rather overstated that, because it's not quite as terrifying as they maybe led us to believe, but at the same time, it's really not awful. It's got 6 attacks at strength 8, -2 AP and 2 damage, and it's got both lethal hits and devastating wounds. Now, these are two very nice, very strong rules. Unfortunately, they are two rules that don't really combo or mesh together all that well because of how they work. So I would say it's not the best profile going, but equally, you can't really argue with it. He is going to be hitting and wounding Marines on 2s, which is really good. And then when you are in melee, thanks to your army rule giving that -1 toughness aura out, he will be wounding even light toughness 9 vehicles on 4s rather than 5s. So he is actually deceptively good even into enemy tanks and vehicles. The big issue with the blade is that lethal hits, as I said, it doesn't really combo with devastating wounds, because lethal hits, when you roll a 6 to hit, it counts as an auto wound, so you don't roll a wound roll, and devastating wounds only procs when you roll a 6 to wound, so lethal hits takes away some of your opportunity for getting those dev wounds through, so it doesn't combo particularly well, but at the same time, they are both very good rules to have, and they certainly will help you kill more stuff. With just what we see here and the army rule, he'll kill about 3 or 4 marines by himself if you choose the -1 to save rolls plague that you can take in your army rule. So he is pretty damn scary. And then into a toughness 9 3-up save vehicle like an impulsor, he'll do around 5 or 6 damage. So he is actually, at the very least, somewhat effective into both infantry and vehicles. So I really like him from that perspective. No matter what you are going into, he is going to be pretty good. On top of that output though, he's also got a few really strong rules. His first one is Gift of Poxes. This improves his contagion range by 3 inches, so now it is much easier to get your opponent in that debuff aura, and he can even start to impact multiple enemy units with it when you get into sort of like battle round 2 or 3, because now you are going to have a 9-inch or a 12-inch aura from him to get that debuff around. So it's a fairly big range, and you can quite easily get at least a couple of enemy units around the board into that -1 toughness and then potentially -1 to save or -1 to hit debuff aura that you have. So he's a really good unit to have in the midfield and just make the whole area much easier for you to get the upper hand in. I think it's a fantastically strong rule, and there's also potential for some other combos if there are any other, enhancements or stratagems or detachment abilities that boost it even more. You could be looking at this guy getting, maybe even a 15-inch or even, fingers crossed, an 18-inch aura of giving that debuff out. So he could be a huge linchpin unit just to bring the most amount of impact from your army rule to as many enemies as you possibly can. The other rule that he has is in some ways a bit less good. It does have a lot of potential and it can be super powerful in terms of boosting your durability, but it can also be a bit limiting. The rule is Shroud of Disease, and it is essentially a lone operative style rule. So he and his unit can only be targeted by enemy ranged attacks if the enemy unit shooting them is within 18 inches. So it does make him and his unit, which can only be Plague Marines, but it makes him and his unit much more durable against a lot of enemy firepower. The big issue with it is that it is an 18-inch range, so it's not terribly difficult to get within that range, but certainly in turn 1, you can put him and his unit pretty much out in the open in your deployment zone, and they will be safe from at least the majority of the enemy firepower. So they're a really strong unit to put on an objective and just know that they will be mostly survivable and be able to sit there most of the game. And unless your opponent really dedicates a unit to getting up close to them, they will probably be scoring you that objective every single battle round. It is essentially just going to make him and his unit that much more durable and that much tankier and force your opponent to get close to them, which does of course put them at risk of you moving some units in your turn to try and catch them in your contagion range or just charge into them and get them locked up in melee. So it can be a really good almost bait and switch style unit as well. I think overall, between the pseudo lone operative rule and the potentially new toughness 6 profile, it is gonna make the Lord of Poxes and a squad of Plague Marines just this unbelievably resilient objective holding unit, and one that will quite possibly or quite likely be able to fight off a lot of enemies that maybe are trying to get in combat with them and push them off an objective, thanks to just that increased durability, but also his fairly scary melee profile, which will let him kill off a lot of those sort of smaller 5-man units that might want to come in and try and steal an objective from you. He will actually do fairly well at killing them almost by himself. Like, your Plague Marines maybe won't even need to do much because he's going to be able to kill most of a squad just on his own attacks. As I said, it is going to be points dependent, but I think he seems fairly good. He's got a solid defensive profile, he's got some really good rules, I think, and he's got some decent punch. And I think especially when you are up close and in contagion range, he is going to be able to chew through enemy units incredibly quickly. I'd say maybe the only bad thing about him is that he can only join Plague Marines, but as I said, I think he's going to turn them into a spectacular objective holding unit, so he does have a niche, and I think he's going to fit it really well. On top of that, we also got to see the datasheet for the new World Eaters unit. This is the Slaughterbound, who is the leader of the 8-bound units in the new Codex. This guy, again, we don't know points, so we can't really make a judgment on just how good he is going to be, but he's got a fantastic 10-inch move, he's toughness 6 with a 3-up save, a 5-up invulnerable, and 6 wounds. So he's really, really fast, and he is actually quite durable too. The 10-inch move sounds like the rumours of a potential faster moving squad of 8-bound is also on the way, meaning that even if the other rumours about advance and charge going away as part of your army rule, if that does end up being true, you are at least getting some consolation because you are getting an extra inch of movement to help balance it out. That's still very much up in the air, I think, because of the article yesterday where they said there haven't been many changes to the army rule, which makes me think that advance and charge is still one of the options, but a lot of the other leaks and rumours have been accurate, so I still don't know about that one. I wouldn't be surprised if the advance and charge option was gone from the Blessings of Khorne, but you know, we kind of have to take Warhammer community at their word, and they said that there aren't big changes, but I kind of am inclined to believe the rumours and the leaks, so we'll just have to wait and see. Either way, if it is gone, it will suck, but getting potentially an extra inch of movement on your 8-bound does make it suck a little bit less. In either case, the main aim of this guy is to get into combat fast, because he and the 8-bound units that he can join really do love ripping enemies to pieces. His Lacerator and Demonic Claw give him 6 attacks at strength 8, -2 AP and 2 damage, which is surprisingly similar to the Lord of Poxes we just saw, albeit with no lethal hits or devastating wounds. So in some ways he's actually worse in melee than his Death Guard counterpart. However, what he lacks in the base melee profile, he can make up with his rule Possessed Lord. And this rule allows him a once per game ability to give his melee weapons +3 attacks and devastating wounds. So he will have 9 attacks on top of any extra bonuses you may be getting from your various detachment or army rules, and things like sustained or lethal hits still seem like they're going to be very likely there in your army rules, whilst they did say in the article yesterday that the Berserker Warband detachment still sounds like it's going to give you a bonus attack and actually 2 bonus strength in the new codex, so you can get a nice bit of extra damage and an extra bit of, extra attacks to go into the enemy. You could quite possibly, based on what we've seen so far, be looking at 10 strength 10 attacks on the charge with this guy and his once per game ability, and that means that when you do use it, he alone could be killing 5 Marines by himself, which is absolutely terrifying. On top of that, he also brings some very nice boosts for the unit he joins. He's got a rule, Lord of the 8-bound, and this rule means that when he is attached to a World Eater's possessed unit, and firstly, before you get any ideas, no, I don't think that means World Eaters are getting the possessed unit. You will see on his datasheet he has the possessed keyword, and what I think this means is that your 8-bound units are all going to have that possessed keyword. So when he is joined to a unit of 8-bound, then he and his unit get Deep Strike and also the Scout's 6-inch rule. So you can drop these guys onto the board into the enemy backfield to give them a really scary immediate problem that they need to worry about, or instead you can use Scout to get him and his unit 6 inches further up the board and give yourself a much easier charge in the first turn to just rip and tear anything in their way. So it gives you a bit of utility and option about how you want these guys to get to the enemy. Of course, sporting only a 5-up invuln may mean that he's a little bit less durable than, say, the Death Guard Lord of Poxes, but he does also have another fantastically good rule in Rage Eternal, and what that does is that in your command phase, you can return a destroyed model to his unit. Now, if 8-bound can still come in a unit of 6, then you have got a unit that will be incredibly difficult to put down because you will just keep getting models back over the course of the game. So unless your opponent is able to wipe out the entire unit in one go, they are still going to be taking a lot of attacks when you finally do charge in and attack with everything that's still alive. And I mean, if the 8-bound are still at about that 46 point per model price tag that they are now, then getting a model back every single of your command phases does mean you could, over the course of the game, be getting back 200 plus points worth of models. So I think it's going to be very easy for this guy to actually pay for himself very quickly. If you are losing at least one model each battle round, then yeah, he could very quickly and very easily pay for his points in just a few turns as you are getting those 8 bound back into the unit. So I do think he's got a lot of hidden value in his datasheet as well, just from the rules. I think in general, they both seem really cool. The Lord of Poxes is great for a backfield or midfield unit that can avoid a lot of incoming fire. It can just move up into the center of the board, holding objectives for you. And then whenever you do get charged, just really hold the line with their hopefully improved toughness and slowly grind down anything that is in combat with you. By comparison, of course, the Slaughterbound, he just wants to get into melee as fast as he possibly can, whether you are going for a 9-inch charge out of Deep Strike or perhaps a bit more reliable option of the Scout 6-inch rule to get up the board a bit easier and get a bit more of a smaller charge range. The risk of that, of course, is you are putting yourself in the line of fire a bit more than you would be with Deep Strike. So it's kind of, you have to weigh up which one you want the most. Do you want that Deep Strike to get them right where you need them and just threaten the enemy, or be a bit more cagey but potentially a bit more reliable with the Scout option? Either way, I think you can do a lot of work with the squad, and I think both the Lord of Poxes and the Slaughterbound have got a very valid place in both armies, and I really can't wait to see just how they interact with the other army and detachment rules, as well as seeing what potential enhancements and stratagems there may be to make them even more terrifying. As always though, I'd really love to know your thoughts on these two units, and which of the two do you think is going to be the most competitive option in their respective codexes? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later guys.